Welcome to a holiday-themed football manager story. Our journey begins 350 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle in the Norwegian municipality of Tromso, home to the world's northernmost top-flight football club, Tromso IL. Being the northernmost football club in the world presents some unique challenges. The weather, perhaps, goes without saying, but with the next closest club being over 300 kilometers away, the travel might be the club's biggest burden. But that has not stopped Tromso IL from building a rich history, winning the Norwegian Cup and a snowy victory over Chelsea being among the highlights. However, there is one thing this club has never done before. Tromso IL have never won the Norwegian Premier Division, and thus we are presented with an interesting holiday-themed challenge. Can we finally bring a top-flight league title to football's northernmost club? And we begin our holiday-themed journey with our manager. A man with a lot of time on his hands outside of the holiday period, it will be Mr. Santa Claus, who will be managing Tromso IL throughout this journey. A man with all the player knowledge and youngster knowledge in the entire world, but maybe not such a great level of discipline. He did let the reindeers bully Rudolph for a long time. The task at hand would not be an easy one, with Tromso expected to finish 7th in the season preview and having a pretty low salary compared to the rest of the league. Overall, this made Tromso feel like a far way off of the teams at the top. So ultimately, it would be up to our manager to guide a team whose club vision was just to record a top half finish in the Premier Division to eventually contend for a league title. Continuing with the holiday theme, we're working with the Christmas tree tactic, essentially a 4-3-2-1 formation. And it was a tactic that actually seemed to work well for this club, as 3 of its best players were all central and defensive mids. The team was led by club captain Ruben Jensen, an aging player with declining physicals, but excellent technical and mental attributes. He would be flanked by other star players, including Sakarius Opsal, a very solid central midfielder with the passing at this level to be very good, as well as Kent Are Antonsen, an excellent ball-winning midfielder for this level. But if this team was going to go anywhere, it would be the young players at the top of the pitch who would guide this team to any kind of potential glory. Of note, Jakob Ramses, an 18-year-old Norwegian with a bright future and excellent potential ability, and honestly, a pretty good player at this level for now. But the shining star of this team would be Lasse Nordaas. A 21-year-old Norwegian, he would be an excellent target forward. With 18 jumping reach and 13 finishing, this team would go as far as his goals would take them. And ultimately, the team would be built around Nordaas's goals. The squad was built for Ramses and Erlien to play in behind him, and for our wingbacks to get the ball up to him and look for headers as goal-scoring opportunities. And despite this promising squad with a lot of potential, it still needed some reinforcements. But without much money in the transfer budget, it would be up to some free transfers to help improve this team. And thus came in Yaya Sane and Matar Ka to help out the team. Matar Ka was really just a squad depth option, but Yaya Sane looked like a player who could really help this squad. With excellent physical attributes, and given the good heading and jumping reach, he might be a player who could grab a goal or two. And thus the team was set, ready to take on the Norwegian Premier Division in Season 1. But as we move into April for the beginning of the league season, let's introduce you to the primary antagonist of this story. Bodo Glimt were the odds-on favorite to win the Norwegian Premier Division this season. They had among the highest salaries in the league and star players at the club that just looked head and shoulders better than anything else in the league. If anyone was going to stop Tromso from winning the league, it would probably be Bodo Glimt. But we'll get back to them a little bit later on. Right now, we're in April, and a league that runs from, well, April to December, because this is a summer league, and Norway's pretty cold. So given that we're in April, let's start the season. And well, the start of the season was kind of rough, opening with a 1-1 draw away to Sandefjord, with this goal from Lasse Nordas sealing the draw for Tromsø. That result was followed up with a 5-3 home defeat to Brann, which, despite having significantly more possession and a slightly higher XG, Tromsø just couldn't find the victory. But our jolly good manager certainly wasn't going to panic, and neither would this young squad. And after those April showers brought May flowers. Tromsø winning 7 on the bounce. All of this catalyzed by a 4-goal performance from Lasse Nordas. He was absolutely on a tear, scoring 12 goals in his first 12 league appearances. His ability to get on the end of crosses was effectively making him and Tromsø an unbeatable team. And that solid play was backed up by Jakob Romsas, a player with a 7.26 overall rating and already having 5 assists in 11 matches. For a team doing so well, nothing could possibly go wrong, right? That is until a 4-0 loss in the Norwegian Cup second round against a team in the Norwegian third division. That loss did precede a little bit of a tough spell. Despite a win against Vålerenga, it was back-to-back losses against Strømsgodset and Haugesund that left Tromsø feeling a little bit down after such a good streak. Despite all that, Tromsø, well, we're having a pretty good start to the season. After that rough 2-game start, they managed to get as high as second in the table, and were actually doing pretty well. And now they sat in 4th place, actually in the European places, and much better than the top half finish that they were originally going for. But remember the antagonist to our story, Bodo Glimt? Well, they were up next, and they were undefeated to start the season. They had scored the most goals in the division and conceded the fewest. Given Tromsø's bright start to the season, this match would determine whether they were title pretenders or truly title contenders. But ultimately, Bodo Glimt proved that they were the real title favorites, as an early goal around the 17th minute that arguably should have been saved set them on their way. Tromsø did eventually get a goal back to tie the match up, with Erlien finding the back of the net, but Bodo Glimt asserted their dominance with a towering header at the back post, sealing their victory. Arguably, the match was relatively even, with similar amounts of XG and Tromsø actually having more possession in the match. But Bodo Glimt showed why they deserved to win and why they had been winning the whole season. They were going to be tough to take down. But as we move to just past the halfway point in the season, after 16 games of 30 games total being played, Tromsø now sat in 3rd place, a little bit off the title place, but still contending very well. They bounced back well after the loss to Bodo Glimt, with 2 wins and 2 draws rounding out their form in July. Tromsø were one of the top scorers in the league, having scored the 3rd most goals, but ultimately the problems lay in their defensive record, having allowed among the most in the league. Lasse Nordas was continuing to prove his credentials and faith from the manager, as he was the league's top scorer just past the halfway point. And players like Romsas, Ruben Jensen, and Sakarius Opsal were all having really good seasons. And that good play led to good form. Tromsø won every match in August and continued to do well in September. There were only 7 matches left in the season, and at this point, Tromsø were actually sitting comfortably in 2nd place. But of course, there was still Bodo Glimt, who had yet to lose a match and remained unbeaten. And at this point, Bodo Glimt were powering their way to a league title. They had only lost once all season, and it was in the Europa Conference League playoffs. And it only took until the 1st of November, with 4 games still left to play and still undefeated. Bodo Glimt had confirmed they were champions. Tromso's form had dipped a little bit in October, 2 draws and a loss to round things out, but with 4 matches remaining, they were still in second place. And while the title was now out of the question, second place guaranteed the Europa League. And at this point, the board were dreaming of playing in Europe and the financial prosperity that might bring. And what did they need to secure second place? Well, first up was a home match against Bodo Glimt. Naturally, Bodo Glimt remained undefeated going into the match, but backed by 21 goals so far from Lasse Nordas, there was a lot of hope that Tromso could pull out a victory. But yeah, they did not pull out the victory. Despite Bodo Glimt's goal being a penalty, they did dominate the game with more shots and a higher XG. They thoroughly deserved to win. But the squad picked themselves up after that loss and finished strongly. A draw and 2 wins to end the season secured second place for this club that was only expected to finish around mid-table. It was a fantastic season for the club, even qualifying for the Europa League, and the money that would bring in would prove to be valuable. But perhaps the best part of this season was the improvement of young players who were now reaching their potential and had the current ability to be part of a title-winning squad. Lasse Nordas had developed amazingly throughout the season, keeping those awesome physicals, but developing his technicals very well. Jacob Ramsas was absolutely phenomenal at this point and was a leading player in the division. Sicarius Opsal had continued to improve into a well-rounded midfielder, and new youngster Yao Pansil was looking like a really good complement to the Ramsas-Nordas duo. And all that good news was capped off as Lasse Nordas won the Norwegian Premier Division Young Player of the Year award, the Norwegian Premier Division Player of the Year award, and the Norwegian Premier Division Top Goal Scorer award, scoring 25 goals in 30 appearances. Overall, this gave the manager and squad a lot of confidence that they could be true contenders for the title next season. But reinforcements would still be needed, and having qualified for Europe, there was a much bigger transfer budget available. And that transfer budget would be sorely needed, because a team located just over 300 kilometers south of Tromso had gone the entire Norwegian Premier Division season unbeaten and had secured a league and cup double. There was still a long way to go to catch Bodo Glimt, but this playing squad gave our manager hope heading into Season 2. Moving into Season 2, squad improvements would be needed for Tromsø to contend for the title. While a second-place finish represented a great season for Tromsø in Season 1, a major area that could be improved was the defense, which allowed 42 goals last season, and given that Bodo Glimt only allowed nearly half of those goals, that was going to be an area that needed to be improved upon to contend for the title. Additionally, looking at their expected points totals, Tromsø was only expected to finish 5th based on their expected points. Also, they allowed more goals than was expected, and this suggests the quality of defensive players wasn't good enough as they allowed more goals than they should have. As such, a major focus of the transfer window would be the defense. Considering that offensive players such as Lasse Nordas and Jacob Ramsas were still improving, this suggests that as these players continue to develop, they would score more goals, but most of the reinforcements would be needed in defense. As such, the off-season transfer window was focused on bringing in good defenders to help shore up the defense. The first signing was Arnau Casas, signed for 1.1 million from Sarpsborg in the Norwegian Premier Division. He was an excellent young center back at just 20 years old who already had the ability to play at this level. He had pretty good technicals, mentals, and physicals, and overall, he would supplement the center back position as a well-rounded young central defender. Next up was Aliou Kohli, signed for £1.1 million as well. He was signed from Jerv, who was playing in the First Division of Norway. Kohli could play all across the back line, providing depth at central defender, but also right back and left back if needed. And he would provide much needed experience and strength to the central defense. And with excellent strength, aggression, and bravery, there was no doubt that he would be an excellent defender. The final signing was Christopher Haugen. He was signed for £700,000 from fellow Premier Division rivals Molde. He was another player that could pretty much play all across the back line, but primarily played on the left. And he was an excellent defender, but additionally a pretty good player going forward. With good stamina, crossing, and of course decent tackling and marking, he was a player who could hold down the left side of defense for essentially the entire season. And the final signing was Santiago Mele, a player who would join in July, about halfway through the season, at the end of his current contract. But he was an excellent sweeper keeper, already at 4.5 stars, with excellent one-on-one and reflexes, as well as just overall good goalkeeping attributes. He would be a solid goalkeeper to come in and help shore up the defense. And that led to a much improved squad, especially with Kohli and Haugen coming into defense. This looked like a team that was developing well, had signed players that were needed, and suddenly looked like a team that might be able to contend for the Norwegian Premier Division title. And it seems that the board had taken notice at this improvement because there were new expectations for the season, primarily now to finish in the top 4 places in the Norwegian Premier Division. A bit of a hike from last season where they were only expected to finish in the top half of the table. And sure enough, in the season preview, Tromso were expected to finish in 4th place. And of course, there was still the team at the top of the table, Bodo Glimt. They would need to be caught if Tromso were going to win the Norwegian Premier Division this season. So, at 14-1 odds to win the title, could Tromso do it this season? Well, if the first 2 months of the season were anything to go by, Tromso were absolutely in the title race, winning 6 matches on the bounce. After those 6 matches, Tromso were sitting at the top of the table, being the only team in the Norwegian Premier Division to win every single match so far. But of course, Bodo Glimt, now sitting in 3rd, were still on their heels, being the only other team having yet to lose a match. The good start to the season was of course spearheaded by Lasse Nordaas, who had 6 goals and 6 appearances to start the season. But the other standout player was Sakarius Opsahl, as the defensive mid had astoundingly scored 3 goals and had 4 assists in the first 6 appearances, with a 7.62 overall rating. But the real test would be the next 3 matches, with tough matches against Molde and Rosenborg up next, and then of course, an away match against Bodo Glimt. If they could win that match, Tromso would be real title contenders. And Tromso absolutely proved their title worth. A 2-0 win away to Molde, followed by a 1-0 win to Rosenborg, and finally the coup de grace, a 1-0 win away to Bodo Glimt. It was the captain, Ruben Jensen, who scored the all-important goal. And of note in those 3 matches were that they had 3 clean sheets in a row. Players like Kohli, Haugen, Jostein Gundersen, and goalkeeper Jacob Haggard had all started the season well. And with a 3-point cushion over Bodo Glimt early on in the season, it seemed like it might be now or never for this Tromso side. And it felt like Tromso were ready to win now, as they didn't lose their first match until July 10th, well into the season, nearly halfway through the season, and it was just in the Norwegian Cup quarterfinal. Moving into August, 19 games in the season, the team had 14 wins, 5 draws, and 0 losses. And this was all built on the back of an excellent defensive record, having only allowed 13 goals, the lowest overall in the league. With 47 points, they had a 4-point cushion over Bodo Glimt and were looking like a strong bet for the title. Unfortunately, though, that loss in the Norwegian Cup did mean they were knocked out in the quarterfinal, meaning a league and cup double was out of the question. It was also a disappointing loss to Sarpsborg in the division below, but you can't win them all. And it certainly didn't stop our manager from believing in the squad and maintaining a very good club atmosphere. But moving into August would lead to new challenges, in particular, the beginning of the Europa League season and the opening of the transfer window, because there was massive interest in Lasse Nordas. In particular, there were a number of teams from the Middle East interested in signing Tromso's star striker, and there was also the minor issue that Lasse Nordas wanted to leave the club due to the interest being shown in him. August would be a significant month for this club as they continued to fight in the Norwegian Premier Division, but also had the UEFA Europa League to worry about and the attempts to keep Lasse Nordas at the club. And with that all in mind, let's take a brief break from the Norwegian Premier Division to talk about Tromso's adventure in Europe. Having finished second last season, Tromso were able to skip the first qualifying round to get into the Europa League proper and entered in the second qualifying round, where they defeated Malmo 2-1 on aggregate. In the first leg, Tromso actually drew 1-1 thanks to an Alu Kohli half volley into the bottom corner. There was a lot of pressure going into the second leg, but in the 92nd minute, Dahl scored an absolute screamer to send Tromso through. The third qualifying round wouldn't be any easier, but Tromso came through in absolutely dramatic fashion against a team from the Serbian Super League. The first leg started off poorly with a 3-2 loss, but it was a goal from Norheim that gave Tromso hope. Tromso needed to win in the second leg. Lasse Nordas scored in added time to take it to extra time. And then in extra time, Lasse Nordas actually sealed his hat trick, getting in behind the defense and sending Tromso through to the next round. The next round was for all the marbles to get into the league phase, and Tromso absolutely dominated. A 6-0 aggregate scoreline win was topped off by this goal by Lasse Nordas, and with that, Tromso were through to the UEFA Europa League phase. They had entered the UEFA Europa League proper, matching the board's vision for the club, having the potential to bring in loads of money, and having the chance to bring a huge reputation boost to the club. But as we move into September, the fixture schedule has never looked more crowded. And with injuries starting to pile up and some players needing a rest, it would be a really difficult end of the season for this Tromso side. One big boost to the club was that there was no longer interest from the Middle East for Lasse Nordas. And although he was still unhappy at the club, at least Tromso knew he would be around until the end of the season. The club, of course, had lost their first game of the season at this point, a 3-1 away loss to Brann, but they were still 7 points clear at the top of the table over second place Bodo Glimt. On the back of having allowed just 18 goals this season, they would need every advantage they could get to try and finish first this season. The journey to bring a league title to football's northernmost club was nearly accomplished. And overall, there were 2 games left until a home match against Bodo Glimt. This would be the ultimate title decider. That being said, Bodo Glimt were in an interesting spot of their own. They started the season phenomenally, their only loss being that 1-0 loss to Tromso. However, in recent matches, they had done very poorly. 4 matches without a win in the Norwegian Premier Division had left the club reeling. So much so that Kjetil Knutsen, who had started as manager for Bodo Glimt, was fired, having been at the club for 6 years. And replacing him at the club was Norwegian legend Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had, of course, previously managed at Molde and more famously Manchester United. In this game, he had also come back to manage Molde before now becoming the manager of Bodo Glimt. And there was a resurgence on hand because after losing 3-0 in the UEFA Champions League, they had won 3-1 at home. So although they were knocked out and were entering now the UEFA Europa League phase, in the first game in charge, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had managed to turn things around. And thus they were 2 matches until the biggest game of this season. This would potentially decide where the Norwegian Premier Division title was headed. Heading back over to Tromso, it wasn't a good start heading into the match. A 3-2 loss to Rosenborg in their previous match was their only preparation. How would they do against Bodo Glimt? A late goal by Lasse Nordaas meant they scraped a 1-1 draw. Lasse Nordaas was able to knock the ball down and get back into the box as he won it and gave Tromso an important draw. And that draw sealed Tromso's place at the top of the Premier Division. And with 6 matches left and a game in hand, they had a 1-point lead over Bodo Glimt. Could Tromso hang on? Unfortunately for Tromso, they had completely collapsed. Matches in the Europa League left an unprecedented mark on Tromso's form, as you had to go all the way to nearly last place, where Tromso had played 4 games and lost every single one of them. And this bad form had carried over to the league. After the 1-1 draw to Bodo Glimt, there was a 2-2 draw to Haugesund, followed by a solid 3-1 win over HamKam, before consecutive losses to Stabæk and Lillestrøm left Tromso reeling. The results were devastating, and the club atmosphere had taken a huge hit as a result. But our manager was determined to win, and after a good team meeting, the club were able to end their non-winning spell with a 2-1 away win over Strømgodset. A 93rd minute penalty from Lasse Nordaas sealed the victory. On the flip side, Bodo Glimt responded well to the draw from Tromso, with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer fashioning wins against Viking and Jerv, but things took an interesting turn, as a horrible turn in form, losses to Odd, a draw to Brann, and a loss to Molde, meant something interesting had happened. Tromso were sitting in first place with 1 match left in the season. And amazingly, Bodo Glimt had dropped out of the title race. It was only Stabæk, who were 3 points behind but had better goal differential. Heading into the last game of the season, they were the only ones who stood between Tromso and a Norwegian Premier Division title. Tromso's last match of the season would be at home to Kristiansand. Sitting 9th place in the table, they effectively had nothing left to play for, having already sealed their fate. But Tromso had just lost to Stabæk, and they were on an incredible run of form, title-winning form, you might even say. In the last match of the season, it would be up to Tromso to turn around their bad form, to win 1 more match, and to win the Norwegian Premier Division. And this would be the squad looking to bring the title home. Could they turn around their bad form and win one last time? So the title came down to the final day of the season. Tromso would be bringing out their classic Christmas tree formation, while their opposition would be coming out in a 4-4-2. they would be trying to stop Tromso from winning the league title. Would their 3-point cushion at the top be enough for them to finally win it all? The first opportunity of the match came down the wing as a cutback to Lasse Nordas was blocked before it was cleared away. Tromso had started the match brightly and were controlling possession. They continued to pass and move and probe, and as the ball fell out wide to Vesterlund, he went down the line and played it into Ramsas, who finished in the back of the net. Tromso led 1-0. If this result held, they would be champions. And they absolutely had to hold on, as Stuybeck had took a 1-0 lead to keep the pressure on. Their opposition had continued to grow in the game, though. They were passing and probing around the Tromso defense to try and find a breakthrough. But Tromso were holding firm. And as they won the ball, they started to look to counter. And it was a perfectly placed through ball in through Lasse Nordas for his 23rd league goal of the season to lead 2-0. Tromsø had the cushion they needed to win the Norwegian Premier Division title. They entered halftime holding on to that comfortable 2-0 lead. Our manager looked at the players and told them they were doing well and to go out in the second half doing the same. But the season had been defined by a good start and a poor finish, and this match was the same. They had an opportunity to score off a mistake, but it was a great save by Hogard to atone. But the opposition weren't going to rest easy. They got through one-on-one, but just missed the target, and they continued to pass and probe to try and find a goal, but it just wasn't to be. Time was ticking down, and we were getting close to the end of the match. Could Tromsø hold on with just a few seconds left? And full time would be called. Tromsø were now champions of Norway. And there it was. The world's most northern club had finally brought home their first league title. Our manager was absolutely delighted, having worked so hard over 2 seasons to finally bring this title home. Lasse Nordas had once again been the standout performer of the season, with his 23 goals leading Tromsø to the title. But that really was backed by excellent defensive performances, as Haugaard kept the most clean sheets in the league. And of course, the other standout performer was Jacob Romsas, whose 6 Player of the Match awards led the Norwegian Premier Division. It could not have gone any better for Tromsø, as they finally got their league title. The board was delighted, and best of all, the fans, who this was all really for, could not have been happier with how things had gone. And with that, our journey comes to a close. Tromso IL, the world's most northern football club, finally won a Norwegian Premier Division title. And with that, having accomplished what he set out to do, our manager was able to retire from football. I would like to thank you all for watching this Football Manager movie. Happy holidays, stay safe, and I will see you all in the next one.